The glass shattered against my white maternity dress, and red wine streamed down over my 7-month pregnant belly like an open wound in public. Inside the banquet hall, where the company's anniversary celebration was taking place, more than 100 guests suddenly stopped laughing. They lifted their phones and waited for me to cry. My mother-in-law, Carmen, stood there holding the empty glass. My husband had his arm wrapped around his mistress. My sister-in-law clapped from the main table. Several managers smiled as if humiliating me had been part of the evening's toast. "This," Carmen said, pointing at the red stains spreading across my stomach, "is what a woman looks like when she tries to buy a family name with pregnancy." I did not scream. I did not cover my dress. I did not look at my husband and beg for help. I only placed one hand over my baby, took a sealed white envelope from my purse, and quietly asked the waiter not to wipe the wine away yet. Less than an hour later, that same table would be left without a contract, without applause, and without the company Carmen believed she still controlled. That was when I smiled. Because the stain everyone thought was my disgrace was not my shame. It was the missing proof. Carmen lifted the rim of the empty glass toward my face, as if she wanted the entire room to see that her hand was not trembling. She wore a gold dress, far too bright for a woman who had spent the past few months pretending her family was not collapsing financially. The chandelier light flashed across her bracelets. All I could hear was the wine dripping from my dress onto the marble floor. Each drop sounded soft. Each drop sounded expensive. Each drop sounded like the end of their family name. "Don't just stand there, Isabel," my husband, Diego, said with a dry laugh. One of his hands rested on Renata's waist, his mistress, while the other held a black folder. "You came to this party because you wanted to create a scandal. Well, here is your audience." Renata tilted her head onto his shoulder and raised her hand, showing off the ring he had bought her with the money he had told me was needed to save the company. The stone glittered in front of my face. It was not large because of love. It was large because of guilt. "Poor baby," Renata murmured, touching her flat stomach beneath her red dress. "He has not even been born yet, and he is already learning that his mother does not know when to leave." A few people laughed. It was an ugly kind of laughter. Nervous laughter. The kind people make when they want to please whoever still appears powerful. My sister-in-law, Patricia, raised her glass from the main table. "Someone bring her a napkin," she said. "Although at this point, what she really needs is dignity." The room laughed again. I stood still. Not because it did not hurt. The wine was cold and sticky, and my baby moved beneath my hand as if he had felt the blow too. My throat burned, but not because I wanted to cry. It burned because for 3 months, I had been waiting for Carmen to do exactly this in front of enough witnesses. A waiter stepped toward me with a white napkin. "No," I said softly. Then I added, "Please let everyone keep watching." That sentence struck the room harder than the glass had. Some guests lowered their phones. Others raised them higher. Diego frowned, because for the first time that evening, he did not understand my reaction. Carmen pressed her lips into a smile. "You see, Diego," she said. "Always dramatic. Always searching for attention." Then she turned to the guests. "My son made a mistake by marrying a woman who does not understand class. And now she is trying to use her pregnancy to take what does not belong to her." She slid a silver folder toward me and placed it on the tall table, right beside the wine stain on the tablecloth. "Sign it," she ordered. "Give up any claim to the family's shares, any claim to the house, and any attempt to give that child our surname without proof." The words left her mouth as if she were discussing a debt. Diego opened the black folder tucked under his arm and pulled out a pen. It was not just any pen. It was the same one we had used a year ago to sign the papers for the house where he now brought Renata while I went alone to doctor appointments. "I will make this simple," Diego said. "I am tired of you. You are difficult. You do not need this stress." For the first time that night, some people in the room stopped smiling completely. Not out of compassion. Out of discomfort. Using my pregnancy as pressure sounded even uglier when spoken aloud. Renata placed her hand on the folder. If she signs tonight, we can all continue the celebration, she said with false sweetness. And you can go rest, Isabel. We would not want anything to happen to you here. I looked at her hand. On her fingers sparkled my money. On her wrist was a bracelet I had seen listed on the company account. In her eyes was the vulgar confidence of someone who believes she has already won simply because someone else promised her a life he could not afford. Do you want that recorded too? I asked. Renata blinked. What exactly? That I am being pressured to sign documents in front of witnesses after the company's director poured wine on me while I am pregnant. Silence opened across the room like a door. Carmen slammed the empty glass onto the table. You are no one in this company. I nodded slowly. That is exactly what I needed you to repeat. Diego gave a short laugh, but his fingers tightened around the pen. Isabel, do not start one of your games. This is not a game, I said. This is documentation. I took my phone from my purse. I did not lift it as a threat. I simply placed it on the table, screen facing upward. The recorder had been running for 42 minutes. Patricia stopped smiling. Renata pulled her hand away from the folder. Carmen looked at the phone, then back at me. Recording a family conversation does not make you powerful, she said. No, I replied. But it helps when that conversation happens during a corporate event, in front of suppliers, investors, and employees, and when the honorary president of the company humiliates a pregnant woman in order to force her to sign away property rights. Their table seemed to shrink. But the real moment had not arrived yet. Diego tried to regain control with the gesture he always used in public, that polite smile of a well-bred man apologizing for his inconvenient wife. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, looking around the room. My wife is emotional because of the pregnancy and… Finish that sentence, I interrupted. My voice was calm. So calm that I saw one of the managers lower his glass without taking a sip. Diego swallowed. It can be confusing. I nodded. Excellent. Then I opened the white envelope I had taken from my purse. I did not show the entire document yet. I only let the blue notary seal and one corner stained with wine become visible. Carmen saw the seal and went slightly pale. Not enough. What is that? She asked. Something you will understand in a few minutes. Patricia stood from her chair. Mother, stop giving her attention. Have security remove her. Two men in black suits moved from the entrance. I recognized them. Diego had hired them to impress the guests, not to protect anyone. One of them approached me. Ma'am, perhaps it would be better if… Do not touch me, I said, looking directly into his eyes. I am 7 months pregnant. I was just attacked in front of cameras, and my lawyer is walking through that door. As if my words were a signal, the double doors of the hall opened. Mr. Vargas entered with a gray folder under his arm. Behind him came a notary with short hair, 2 assistants carrying tablets, and Dr. Molina, my obstetrician, still wearing a white coat beneath a dark jacket. The entire room turned toward them. The sound of the notary's heels against the marble floor swallowed the last traces of laughter. Diego stepped toward me. What have you done? I looked down at the red stain on my dress. The same thing you did, I said. I prepared. Carmen lifted her chin. This is a private event. The notary opened her case. Not for legal purposes, she said, and not for a publicly announced merger. Mrs. Salvadera, according to the invitation sent to investors, suppliers, and internal media, tonight's event also serves as the final meeting before signing. Carmen's face hardened. Who invited her? I placed the white envelope on the table. A drop of wine touched its edge. Diego gave a disbelieving laugh. You cannot invite anyone to negotiations for my company. I raised my eyes. Your company just lost that word. Mine. I said nothing more. I let the sentence do its work. The effect was immediate. A low murmur moved through the hall, first at the tables nearest us, then all the way to the far end where the suppliers were seated. Phones that had been recording my humiliation now turned toward Diego's face. Carmen gripped the empty glass so tightly that I thought it might break in her hand. Enough, she said. Isabel has no shares. No position. No right to speak at this table. Correct, I said. I have no shares in my own name. Renata smiled again, thinking she had found room to breathe. Then stop embarrassing yourself. But the fund that decides whether this merger is signed or cancelled, I continued, is under my control. Renata's smile died before it reached her eyes. Diego opened his mouth, but no words came out. Carmen needed one more second to understand. When she did, the glass slipped from her fingers and fell onto the marble with a dull sound. It did not break. It rolled instead, touching the toe of my wine-stained shoe. That sound was better than applause. Mr. Vargas placed the gray folder on the table. The result first, he said, following exactly what I had asked him to do. Today's signing has been suspended. The temporary operating accounts are frozen. The Salvatierra family may not withdraw funds, transfer assets, or alter contracts until the audit is complete. The hall froze. I did not speak about contract clauses. I did not mention financial structures or percentages. First, I allowed everyone to understand the one thing that mattered. Carmen had just lost her rescue. Then Vargas explained the necessary details in short, clear sentences, because I did not want anyone hiding behind complicated language. For 8 months, Salvatierra Company had been seeking a merger to avoid bankruptcy. The group expected to inject the capital was called Horizon Monroe. In public documents, it appeared as a faceless private fund. In the real documents, the principal beneficiary and representative with veto power was me. Not because I had been born rich. Not because a man had saved me. But because before marrying Diego, I had sold my stake in a medical logistics company I had helped build from the ground up. Carmen had always believed I was a lucky receptionist because that was how she first met me. She never asked what I had done after leaving that job. Diego knew. But he preferred treating my money as a convenient secret, something he could use privately and deny publicly. For 2 years, he had borrowed against my name emotionally, not legally. He asked me to temporarily support his family. He swore the company would recover. When I became pregnant, he began hiding accounts, traveling with Renata, and telling me I was paranoid. So I had not come to the celebration to cry. I had come to close the doors. Carmen tried to speak, but the notary raised a hand. Before we continue, I must record Mrs. Herrera's physical condition. Dr. Molina? The doctor approached me carefully. Mrs. Herrera is 7 months and 3 weeks pregnant, he said clearly, making sure every phone could capture his words. She has been instructed to avoid severe physical and emotional stress. Being struck with liquid and pressured to sign documents under these conditions must be documented. Diego's expression changed. Not into guilt. Into calculation. I did not touch her, he said quickly. There it was. The first attempt to save himself. I looked at Vargas. Record that. Vargas made a note on his tablet. Recorded. Carmen turned to her son. Diego, be quiet. Renata stepped back, but Patricia pushed her forward with desperate eyes, as if the mistress still had some use. She is manipulating everyone, Renata said. Her voice shook, but she continued. She came in white to provoke Carmen. She probably wanted this to happen. I looked at her. Yes. That single word disarmed her. The guests began whispering again. Renata blinked. What? Yes, I repeated. I knew Carmen would do something. I did not know whether it would be a glass, insults, or an order to security. That is why I asked for every agreement to be signed after the toast. That is why my lawyer waited outside. That is why the notary was instructed to enter only if you turned my pregnancy into a tool of pressure. Carmen took a heavy breath. So this was a trap? No, I said. It was an opportunity. You chose what to do with it. The sentence cut through the room like a clean strike. Patricia tried to drag the scandal back into the mud. "She is pregnant, and no one even knows by whom," she shouted. "My brother is not obligated to take responsibility for that child if she—" "Patricia," Diego said. But it was too late. I opened another folder. This one was not legal. It was medical. I placed it on the table and put an ultrasound photo on top in clear plastic. The wine stain reached one corner but did not touch the image. That was the second object of the evening. My baby, whom they had turned into an insult, was now returning as evidence. "The result first," I said. "Diego is the father. Renata is not pregnant. And the money used to buy her ring was taken from the company account 3 days after Diego asked me to sell my car so he could pay salaries." Renata pressed a hand to her chest. The ring flashed again. She no longer looked like a prize. She looked like a price tag. One manager at the back of the hall lowered his phone. Another whispered something to his wife. The laughter was completely gone. Diego moved toward the medical folder. "That is confidential. My pregnancy stopped being confidential when your mother poured wine over my stomach and you asked me to give up my son's rights in front of your partners." I did not raise my voice. There was no need. Dr. Molina indicated the documents. A non-invasive prenatal paternity test was requested by Mrs. Herrera after threats were made regarding the child's surname. The results were legally delivered to her. Diego looked around for allies among the same men who had laughed at me minutes earlier. No one could hold his gaze. Renata tried to remove the ring unnoticed. "I saw it. Do not hide it." Her hand froze. "That ring stays on the table too. You cannot take my things," she said, her voice rising. "It is not yours," I replied. "It is evidence of misappropriated funds." Mr. Vargas extended a clear evidence bag, not like a police officer, but like a lawyer who understood how to humiliate with order. Renata looked at Diego, waiting for him to defend her. Diego took half a step back. That tiny movement was the exact moment she understood her real role. She had not been the chosen woman. She had been an expense he would abandon first. "Diego," Renata whispered. He did not look at her. "I did not authorize that purchase," he said. Renata opened her mouth. The room heard the small, absurd sound of the expensive ring sliding over her knuckle as she struggled to pull it off with damp fingers. Finally, it dropped onto the table with a quiet ring. It was the sound of a mistress turning into a receipt. Carmen closed her eyes. For the first time, she spoke without shouting. "We can discuss this privately." There it was. A plea disguised as control. I stepped closer to her, close enough for her to see the drying wine on my dress and the way my hand still protected my stomach. "I did not come here asking for a place in your family," I said. "I came to decide whether your family name survives tomorrow." For 2 seconds, nobody breathed. That was the sentence I had saved for the moment Carmen stopped pretending to be a queen. Patricia slowly sat down. Her glass remained untouched in front of her, but her hand trembled so violently that circles formed in the liquid. Carmen looked at Vargas. "What do you want?" "No," I said. "Do not ask what we want. Listen to what has already happened." I took the wine-stained document and placed it in the center of the table. The notary lifted a small portable light so everyone could see the heading. "Preventive revocation of merger approval." The words were cold. The effect was devastating. "The Polanco house is under review because it was purchased with misappropriated funds," Vargas said. "The corporate card has been blocked. Transfers connected to Ms. Renata Eduardo have been submitted to the report. The merger agreement will not be signed tonight. Any attempt to remove Mrs. Herrera from this hall will be added as intimidation of a pregnant woman and legal representative of the fund." The consequences appeared one by one. The financial director left to call the bank. 2 suppliers closed their folders. The photographer lowered his camera. A waiter took the bottle of wine Carmen had used like a weapon. Diego grabbed my arm. Not hard. Just enough to pretend we were close. Just enough for me to feel the pressure. Please, he muttered. You do not understand what you are doing. I looked at his hand on my skin. Doctor, I said. Record unauthorized physical contact. Diego released me as if burned. Dr. Molina did not argue. He simply nodded and wrote it down. Diego lifted both hands. This is absurd. She is my wife. I can speak to her. You could have, I said. For 3 months you preferred speaking with Renata, your mother, and your lawyers about how to leave my son defenseless. Renata raised her face. You are not innocent either. No, I replied. I am a woman who checked the bank statements. I took a small golden flash drive from my purse and placed it beside the ring. That was the 3rd strike. But not the last. Messages where Diego promised you a house after I signed away my rights. Invoices for your trips. Transfers. Calls from Carmen to the lawyer who prepared a document meant to force me to state that my child would make no claims. And a recording from 2 weeks ago, where Patricia said that if I were frightened enough, I would sign anything just to avoid giving birth alone. Patricia jumped up so fast that her chair fell backward. The sound against the floor made several people flinch. That is a lie! I touched my phone screen. Patricia's voice played clearly. Clearer than she expected. A frightened pregnant woman will sign anything. If Isabel believes Diego will abandon her at the clinic without paying, she will even give us the child's surname. The silence after that sentence was different. It was not discomfort anymore. It was disgust. Patricia went white. Her lips moved, but no defense came out. Carmen whispered, "Turn it off." She did not order me. She asked. I let the recording continue for 3 more seconds, long enough for Carmen's laugh to be heard in the background. Then I turned it off. "No," I said. "We can talk about family." Diego ran a hand through his hair. The perfection of his appearance began to fall apart. For the first time that night, he looked like what he truly was, a man who had built an expensive lie. "My mother did not know everything," he said. Carmen turned toward him. "What?" "I managed the accounts," Diego blurted out, each word coming faster than the last. "I communicated with Renata. I bought the ring. But it was temporary. I was going to return the money after the merger." Renata gave a broken laugh. "Temporary?" "I was temporary." Diego did not answer. The humiliation had changed direction. Minutes earlier, everyone had been staring at the stain on my dress. Now they were staring at the woman in the red dress, trying to shake herself free from the story. Renata tore the ring off completely and pushed it toward Diego. "You told me the company was already yours." "Shut up," he said. "You told me your wife would disappear after giving birth." The room absorbed that sentence like a slap. I felt my baby move again. It was not pain. It was a small push from inside, as if my son had marked that moment too. Carmen lifted a hand to her mouth. "Diego." I looked at the notary. "Record that statement." "Recorded," she said. Diego turned toward me with wide eyes. "Isabel, I did not mean." "You did not say it to me," I replied. "You said it to her. And she just said it in front of everyone." Renata seemed to realize too late that she had also drowned herself. "I did not know he was stealing," she said. Vargas raised an eyebrow. I placed printed photographs on the table. One showed Renata leaving a jewelry store with Diego. On the back was a taped copy of the corporate account receipt. "You did not know he was stealing," I said. "But you signed as the holder of the additional card." Renata covered her face with both hands. Her makeup smudged around her eyes, revealing the raw fear beneath it. Carmen came toward me. She no longer walked like the hostess of the room. She moved like a woman crossing the ruins of her own life, trying not to make a sound. "Isabel," she said quietly, "think about the child. This will affect him too." I stared at her for a long second. "I was thinking about my child when you tried to take his surname from him." Carmen lowered her eyes. "We can recognize him," she said quickly. "Not after Renata's ring, paid for with company money. She swallowed. We will pay you. And not after Patricia said a frightened pregnant woman would confirm anything. Carmen closed her eyes. Please stop. Her voice was so low only the nearest tables could hear, but the phones continued recording. In Carmen's world, private shame could be survived. Public shame could not. No, I said. You began this with wine. I will end it with documents. Vargas pulled out the final sheet. Mrs. Herrera is offering a conditional exit. Diego lifted his head like a man who had seen water. An exit? I nodded. Yes. An exit for the employees. Not for you. The difference crushed him. Horizon Monroe Fund will temporarily cover employee salaries during the audit, Vargas said. Critical suppliers will receive direct payments, and company operations will not stop. However, the Salvadera family is removed from all administrative decisions while asset theft, coercion, and misuse of resources are investigated. Then applause sounded from a side table. It was not loud, but it was enough. Another employee joined. Then a woman from accounting. Then someone from the kitchen doorway. The sound grew slowly, awkward at first, then certain. Carmen looked around in horror. Not because the company was being saved. Because it was being saved without her. Diego tried to speak over the applause. Isabel, we are husband and wife. You cannot do this. Not anymore. I took the pen he had placed in front of me, the same pen he wanted me to use to give up everything. I calmly signed the document in front of the notary. Diego stepped forward. What are you signing? A petition for judicial separation and property protection for my son. I did not say lawsuit. I did not say long legal process. I said what everyone could understand. From this moment on, you cannot sell the house. You cannot touch the joint accounts. And you cannot decide anything about my child's surname without a judge. Diego went pale. The pen remained in my fingers. On the metal was a trace of dried red wine from the table. I raised it slightly. You wanted me to sign away my rights with this pen, I said. In the end, I used it to sign the limits of yours. The financial director returned to the hall with his phone in hand. Mr. Salvadera, he said, without looking directly at Diego. The bank has just confirmed that the temporary accounts are frozen. The sound Carmen made was not a scream. It was worse. It was a broken breath, quiet, as if the air no longer belonged to her. Patricia sat again and began crying silently. Renata picked up her purse, but the notary stopped her with one look. Miss, she said, I recommend you do not remove any objects connected to the investigation. Renata left the purse on the chair as if it weighed too much. Diego looked at his mother. You said she had no power. Carmen looked back at him with hatred. You said you controlled her? That sentence destroyed them completely. I did not need to add anything. The family that had called me an opportunist was devouring itself in front of its own witnesses. I turned to the waiter, who was still holding the white napkin. No, I said more gently. May I? He handed it to me with trembling hands. I did not wipe my dress first. I wiped the ultrasound photo. That gesture made many people lower their eyes. The wine on my clothes could wait. My son did not need to carry a single drop of their shame. Dr. Molina approached. Isabel, we need to check your blood pressure. Yes, I said. I am finished. Carmen grabbed my wrist quickly, desperately. Do not leave like this, she whispered. We can fix everything. I will apologize in front of everyone. I looked at her hand on my skin. She removed it before I had to ask. I do not need an apology so I can return to a family I never wanted, I said. I need my son to be born far away from this table. Diego stepped toward me. For the first time, he did not look like a husband, a businessman, or an heir. He looked like a spoiled child whose stage had been taken away. And me? He asked. I looked at him without hatred. That hurt him more than anything. You will learn the difference between having a surname and having shame. Renata cried silently beside the table. Patricia did not comfort her. Carmen looked at no one. Diego opened his mouth, but he found no sentence that would not drag him deeper. Mr. Vargas gathered the folders. The notary collected the protocols. The doctor offered me his arm, but I did not take it immediately. First, I picked up the white envelope, the ultrasound image, and the wine-stained pen. 3 objects. My humiliation. My son. My decision. I walked toward the exit slowly, because my 7-month pregnant body did not need to prove anything by rushing. Each step across the marble left the room quieter behind me. The people who had lifted their phones expecting to record my tears now stepped aside, unwilling to touch me. At the door, I heard Carmen say my name. Isabel. I did not turn around. Vargas's voice sounded behind me. Mrs. Salvatierra, all communication must be in writing. For the first time, the Salvatierra name did not sound powerful. It sounded like a notice. That night, I did not sign the merger. I did not save Carmen. I did not forgive Diego. But I did save the salaries of 140 employees who were not guilty of the fact that this family had used them as decoration. 3 days later, the audit uncovered transfers to Renata's accounts, duplicated supplier payments, and personal purchases disguised as business expenses. The house was frozen. Diego's card stopped working at luxury stores. He tried to buy flowers to ask my forgiveness. I knew because he called me 12 times from an unknown number. I did not answer. Carmen published a statement saying she was temporarily stepping away from the business for health reasons. No one believed her. The video of the wine had already spread too widely. The image of my white dress with the red stain was stronger than any statement. Renata returned the ring through her lawyer. It came in a clear bag. Beside the jewelry was a note in which she claimed she had also been deceived. Perhaps part of that was true. But a woman who laughs while a pregnant woman is being humiliated is not innocent. She simply chose the role of victim too late. Patricia sent me an apology message at 2 in the morning. She wrote that her mother had pressured her. I deleted it without replying. Diego eventually came to the clinic 1 week later, when I had an appointment because of high blood pressure. He did not enter. The guard explained to him that a temporary restraining order was in effect. From the waiting room, I saw him through the glass, in the same expensive suit, with the same ruined face. I did not feel victory. I felt peace. My son was born 6 weeks later, strong and pink, his tiny fist wrapped around my finger, as if he already knew that no one in this life would take away what belonged to him while I was still breathing. I named him Mateo. Not after Diego. After my grandfather, the man who taught me that a signature only has value when the hand holding the pen does not tremble. When I held Mateo to my chest for the first time, I remembered the cold wine, the laughter, the raised phones, and the glass rolling against my shoe. Weeks later, people asked me whether it hurt that the video was still online. Yes. It hurt. But I remembered something else too. In that video, I was not broken. I was still. And sometimes a still woman is not accepting defeat. Sometimes she is waiting until every guilty person steps close enough to the table.